Today is Wednesday, November 3rd. The time is 7 o'clock. Mr. Aho, would you please call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis? Here. Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Here.
Mr. Felber? Here. Mrs. Gordon?
Here. Thank you. We are all here. Would you please stand for the pledge?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to all in attendance and those watching online. A special hello and welcome to the students and families in attendance from Samuel Bissell Elementary School and R.B. Chamberlain Middle School. We're here to be recognized this evening. First of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Rhonda Crawford and Ms. Leah Trappis as the new members of the Board of Education to be sworn in early January. You ladies worked very hard for this accomplishment, and I look forward to working with you in 2022. Also, thank you to my colleagues Angela DeFabio and Rob Felber, who will be stepping down from these roles. Your work for our kids and our schools, Angela over the past 4 years, and Rob over the past 8 years, is definitely appreciated, and I'm grateful for your service to the kids of our schools. A big thank you to all who voted yesterday to re-elect me for my third term of the Board of Education, and to those who supported me along the journey, all along the way, one way or another. You've been an encouragement, and it's been greatly appreciated throughout all this time. My focus on this campaign has been on the students and schools, as it has been as a board member, and how I can positively influence our board and current colleagues, future board colleagues and current colleagues. And it's just incredible, the support of your neighbors and community and what we can do when we all work together. Over the years as a Twinsburg resident, I've witnessed the actions of some pretty amazing people who support each other through good times and bad, and that's the reason why I love living in this community and having my kids attend this community, or the schools, one that's still here. More importantly, onto the students and some pretty incredible events that have been happening over the past week. So congratulations to Tigers Aiden Kane, who finished 50th overall in his third career regional cross country meet, and to Sophie Bissett, who finished 75th at the OHS AA regional cross country meet in Boardman this past Saturday, so very well done. Our boys soccer team, varsity soccer team, congrats to them on their success as district runner-ups for the 2021 season. And as a Tiger soccer mom, I'm very proud of these boys and what they've accomplished, and I think I posted about this as well. What they've accomplished under Coach Lally and his leadership, and the role models they become to the JV students, Tigers and soccer players, and even the younger kids in maybe AC and below as well. They've just been great role model to all these boys, and my son included. And something else to recognize is Coach Critchlow. He was named Assistant Coach of the Year of the Greater Cleveland Greater Cleveland Coaches Association. So way to go, Coach Critchlow. Well, very well deserved. And yesterday, the Lady Tigers last week they won the district championship and moved on to regionals. And definitely an awesome accomplishment for these amazing group of girls under Coach Garber's leadership. Last evening they did challenge Walsh, and it didn't, at Streetsboro High School, it didn't turn out in their favor, but they definitely can be proud of all they've accomplished, and as district champions once again this year. So to both the Lady Tigers and the boys varsity soccers, congratulations. You guys and girls had an amazing season, and definitely something to celebrate. But speaking of celebration, the reasons why we're here, we're going to move on soon to some of the wonderful students here that we are here to recognize. So I'll conclude my board president report and turn the meeting over to Superintendent Mrs. Powers.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Good evening, everyone. It's so great to see so many of our kids and their parents here tonight. We have so many things to celebrate, and we're going to get to all of that in just 1 minute. Just a couple of other announcements to make this evening. Mrs. Davis, you were so kind to congratulate Mrs. Crawford and Mrs. Travis, but we also would like to congratulate you for your re-election to the board. You truly are an advocate for the students of our community, and you work so hard to keep kids, all kids, in the center of every decision that you make. So congratulations. We look forward to working with you in the next 4 years, and your leadership means the world to our students and to our staff. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Our annual Fill the Bus campaign was a huge success. So boys and girls, if you donated during Fill the Bus, we had 2 weeks, we donated over 16,000 pounds of food in collaboration with our friends at Nordonia's school district as well. So we are just so excited. We have so many members of our community that are in need, and so when we can come together as a school district and do something that we can be so proud of, 16,000 pounds of food, that's a lot of food. And I know that's going to go a long way to help our neighbors and our friends who are food deficient and can certainly use a helping hand here as we begin the latter part of the fall season. We want to thank head football coach Mike Bell and our varsity football team, because on Saturday, October 23rd, our team met the bus over at the Emergency Assistance Center and helped to unload all that food. Good thing they're strong young men. It's a lot of food to move. And helped Mrs. Hunt, who is the executive director, put all the food on the shelves and prepare it for the community members who need to visit the center. So thank you to Coach Bell and our football team for their help also in our Fill the Bus campaign. Mrs. Davis, you mentioned cross-country and soccer, and I also want to expound because we've had other teams, or at least one other team, who had a wonderful run this fall season, and that's a big congratulations to our Lady Tiger volleyball team under the direction of head coach Jess Rader. Our lady volleyball team were sectional champs, which is a huge, big deal for them. And unfortunately, about a week ago, they were defeated at Hudson in the district semifinal tournament. But boy, they looked really good. And it was so much fun watching the coach on the sidelines. She is just all about building spirit on that volleyball team. So congratulations to our coach, Jess Rader, and our assistant coach, Mr. Dianetti, and all of the girls on the volleyball team. It was just a fun season for them, and they did very well. Also, last Thursday evening, our Tiger Marching Band, under the direction of Mr. Ryan Bonnets, performed their Marching Band Showcase. One last listen to our wonderful marching band before they transition now to concert band season. So we're so proud of our marching band and the flag corps and all the spirit that they bring to all the football games. And it's so interesting that that season went by so fast, and here we are off to a concert band season. So congratulations to our band and to Mr. Bonnets and Ms. Gossett for their leadership in the music department. Board of Education, this evening you'll hear a brief administrative report about the proposed academic calendar for the 2022-23 school year. We know that our families and staff members rely on the districts releasing this information as soon as possible. Thus, this evening I will present the proposed calendar. But before we do that, without further ado, I'd like to ask Mr. Winter, who is our wonderful assistant principal at Samuel Bissell Elementary School, to please come forward, because I hear we have a lot of Bissell Tigers to celebrate this evening. Mr. Winter.
All right, thank you everyone. Hi everybody, how y'all doing? I'm Mr. Winter, assistant principal at Samuel Bissell Elementary, and I'm so excited to be here tonight to recognize some fantastic second and third graders as Students of the Month. And just a little background, the Students of the Month program at Samuel Bissell Elementary School recognizes outstanding student achievement at the second and third grade levels. The focus of this recognition program is on citizenship, academics, social, civic, volunteer, or other accomplishments that set this student apart from their peers. We would like to proudly acknowledge the positive accomplishments of the following students. And before I start announcing some names, just to let you all know how this is going to go. So when I call your name, what you're going to want to do is kind of come around here, swing by me. I'm going to go ahead and give you your certificate, and then you're going to head down this way, everyone. Walk up those steps onto the stage. Up here front, we're going to shake some hands. We're going to have our certificates in front of us, and then we're going to get some great pictures, okay? So we're going to go ahead and start in second grade with Ada DeHall from Miss Conrad's class. From Mrs. Springer's class, Jillian Knaus. Evelyn Miller from Miss Jolly's class. Carter Patrick from Mr. E's class. And Giuliano Susan from Miss King's class. All right, boys and girls, let's go ahead and put those certificates up so we get some nice pictures here. Folks want to come on down? All right, how about a round of applause for Steve? All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and move on to our third grade students of the month. And we're going to go ahead and start with Rachel Couch from Mrs. Angler's class. From Mrs. Rowetter's class, Michael Curry. From Mrs. Angler's class, Asher Davis. Aubrey Hall from Miss Markham's class. Ian Milione from Miss Belinsky's class. Madison Schultz from Mrs. Gladys' class. Eliana Sorik from Mr. Lavis's class. And Alexandra Weber from Miss Benzie's class. All right, boys and girls, let's go and hold those certificates up. We'll get some nice pictures here. If anyone wants to come up and quickly grab them. All right, how about another round of applause for these great students? Now, before I call Miss Michelle Loudon up from R.B. Chamberlain Middle School, if all of our boys and girls can kind of stay put, because we want to be here to recognize the fine students from R.B. Chamberlain as well. So if my students could kind of hang out, that would be fantastic to go ahead and recognize the RBC folks. That would be fantastic. So thanks everyone for that. But I would be remiss if I didn't make one comment before I turned it over to Mrs. Loudon. We just concluded a very successful readathon. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year at Samuel Bissell, and it's run by our fabulous PTA. And their leadership through this is just phenomenal. So each year we set out and we set a goal of raising $10,000 and reading over 100,000 minutes. So they're still kind of calculating all the minutes read, but we're pretty sure we're going to exceed the 100,000 minute mark. But we already do know how much money was raised through this. And through the PTA's effort and our generous families, we raised over $17,000. And none of that is possible without the leadership of the PTA and our fantastic families and just being so generous. And of course, our students for all that they did for reading all those minutes and really raising all that money. So we're certainly very excited about that. And we're also very excited because typically when we meet each of those goals, Mrs. Johnson, the building principal, typically does something kind of outstanding. And so over the last few years, she's been dancing on the roof. So I'm not sure if we're going to be doing that again this year, but you can imagine it's going to be something a lot of fun. So I just want to take this opportunity just to thank everyone for their efforts with this year's readathon. And with that being said, I would like to invite Mrs. Michelle Loudon up here, Assistant Principal at R.B. Chamberlain Middle School.
Congratulations, students at Bissell. That is quite an accomplishment. Good evening, Twinsburg Board of Education. It is my pleasure this evening to recognize our 7th and 8th grade students from R.B. Chamberlain. Students of the month are recognized for meeting 6 criteria. They show respect and consideration to others. They show enthusiasm for academic and extracurricular activities. They exert a positive influence on their classmates. They exhibit leadership characteristics, as well as patriotism and democratic principles. And of course, they show responsibility. So the following students have been selected by their teachers to be R.B. Chamberlain's Middle School Students of the Month for October. First up, I have Alexandra Rosenblum. Alexandra is an exemplary student. She is a natural writer and spares no attention to detail or elaboration, and is musically inclined also. Next up is Jack Nelson. Jack is an excellent student who has a strong work ethic and keeps working through an assignment until it's his best answer. Jack is prepared and organized for class and participates frequently. Congratulations. Gianna Brown is next. Gianna is a star student. She tries her hardest on every assignment and asks for clarification when she is confused. She is always willing to help out when needed. Leanne Boykin. Leanne is outgoing, funny, cheer someone up who is having a bad day. On to our 8th graders. First, we have Gianna Vince. Gianna is responsible, thoroughly completes every assignment on time, and takes accountability for her learning. She is respectful of others, her teachers, and always brings the very best to the classroom. Nicholas Morelli. Nicholas is an exceptional young man. He is committed to excellence in his academics and is well liked by his peers. He is a positive role model, a good friend to others. Sienna Bora. Sienna is an engaged learner. She leads others by example and is consistent in her role as a good citizen. She is a pleasure to teach. Micah Sanford. Michael is an exemplary student and is a great role model for his 8th grade students. He is an enthusiastic during class and is always participating. He also does a great job for challenging himself at his best. If you would like to have a picture, now is the time. You can hold up their certificates and I'll invite you down. Thank you so much, RBC students. I'm very proud of you. I would also like to take another moment to share with you some highlights at RBC for the month of October. Every quarter we have 2 health and wellness days, which is part of our PBIS program, which students participate in activities. The wellness focus for October was the Stress-Less Month and mindfulness and meditation. Students participated in Drum Fit, which was quite spectacular, out at the stadium, and it was just wonderful to see. They were energized, they were happy to participate, and we would like to thank our PTA for sponsoring our Health and Wellness Day for October. Students at RBC have also participated in Red Ribbon Week, where both the students and the staff dressed up for Spirit Days to say no to drugs. Thursday was Camo Day, and it was themed Make Drugs Disappear. That was a popular day. Everybody has camo these days. And the good news for the month for RBC, which we are happy to be recognized by the U.S. News and World Report, R.B. Chamberlain Middle School was ranked number 41 out of 1,224 Ohio middle schools. And the rankings were based upon our performance on state tests, graduation, and how well we prepare our students for high school. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Do we have any committee reports tonight?
I'd just like to mention that the Cuyahoga Valley Career Center last week, we were able to finally return after 2 years to what's called our All Boards Dinner. And that was when all the different school boards from the 8 schools that feed into CBCC get together, and we got to see the renovated medical assistant area. We got to hear some from some fantastic students, and in particular our escort from Twinsburg, who's looking ahead into occupational therapy. So it was a very good, enjoyable night, and got to meet some of the other boards from the other schools as well.
Yeah, and they do this, last year obviously was skipped over, but they do this every year with the boards, and the culinary students always put on such an amazing dinner for us and dessert, and just lots of talent, and they treat us well over there, but it was just a really good event to be a part of, and glad we can get a chance to do that this year. Are there any other committee reports?
Okay, hearing none, moving on to administrative reports, Mrs. Farley. Thank you, Mrs. Davis. So just take a minute for Mrs. Harden to start the PowerPoint. Board of Education, this evening, under the new business section of the agenda, you'll find a recommendation for the 2022-2023 academic calendar. Per statute, a traditional school district Board of Education must hold a public hearing at least 30 days prior to adopting its school schedule. Tonight's agenda provides this opportunity and ample time for members of the community to provide feedback before the board would take action regarding the calendar at its meeting on December 8th. The calendar that you will review this evening was developed in collaboration with the Twinsburg Education Association and is supported by a large number of our staff members. I would like to highlight some of the areas of interest on this proposed calendar. First, just a reminder that the Ohio Department of Education no longer counts days as a requirement for a year in the life of a student, but rather it's converted to hours. And honestly, that gave us some flexibility last school year and this school year when we're talking about operating in a pandemic. So what was once traditionally determined by a number of days, and the backstory of the school district, we now have to ensure that our kindergarten children are in class 455 hours a year. Our full-day students in kindergarten through grade 6 must be in school 910 hours a year, and students in grades 7 through 12, 1,001 hours per year. I can tell you, Board of Education, that traditionally our calendar included days that would equate to many more hours than that. And the importance to that is if there's a calamity day, if we have a snow day, and by the way, I don't know if you saw, it started flaking this afternoon. We had a little bit of snow action in Twinsburg. But as we get into the winter months, it's important that we have a little extra flex in our school schedule to enable us to have ample opportunity to get the number of hours in that are required here by statute. So let's take a look at the calendar as proposed this evening. To begin, you'll note that there are going to just be 3 soft reopening days proposed for the 22-23 school year. Please note that students in preschool through grade 8 will have soft reopening days for all 3 days, and that will be August 16th, 17th, and 18th. However, Twinsburg High School students would only have 2 soft reopening days, and those would be August 16th and 17th, and they would report for their first full day of instruction on August 18th. Now the reason for that is if you take a look into the month of October and you see October 12th, it's like a salmon color, we participate in a National Assessment Day, and that's a day in which not all students at Twinsburg High School are on campus. So it's sort of like a trade. So instead of the high school students having a 3rd soft reopening day, they will have only partial students on campus on October 12th, where students are participating in national assessments. So that's the reason why there's a difference for students at the high school level, where the other students in our school community would have 3 soft reopening days. Friday, August 19th would be a data day, and students would not have school. The reason for that is our staff will use that day to take a look at the preliminary assessments that they provide to students during soft reopening, so that when the school week begins the following week of the year, teachers are ready to begin understanding a little bit about each of the students who are in their classrooms, so that they are informed by knowing strengths and weaknesses and being able to plan instruction accordingly. All students in grades preschool through 12 would report on Monday, August 22nd. And then looking into the month of September, beyond Labor Day, students would not have school on Monday, September 26th. That would be a curriculum day. Or on Wednesday, October 5th, and that would be a data day. And the reason for that is those are good work days for staff where professional development opportunities are provided, where teachers work in their professional learning communities talking about student assessment data and how to build great lesson plans. But it's also the time on the 26th, which is Rosh Hashanah, and the 5th of October, which is Yom Kippur, to allow our families of the Jewish faith to be able to celebrate that holy day. So it works for both professional reasons as well as for our families to celebrate who are of the Jewish faith. Now, winter break looks a little different with this proposed calendar, with the first day of winter break starting on Thursday, December 22nd. Being that Christmas in next school year doesn't fall until the 25th, this was kind of a big conversation with the teachers, especially our teachers at Twinsburg High School who have to give end of semester exams. And so they wanted some flexibility in having classes that week so that they can get those exams finished before the students head out for winter break, and that will be where the semester ends there on December 21st. Students would then resume school on Thursday, January 5th, with the staff returning the day before for a half records day, half professional development. Please note something a little different in February. Historically, a long weekend is planned for the President's Day weekend. However, on this particular calendar, both Monday, February 13th and Monday, February 20th would be days off from school. This recommendation actually, again, comes from our high school staff members who are concerned about the impact on the blue-white schedule when there is a Friday and a Monday off. It really does tinker with that blue-white schedule. So it was proposed to have 2 Mondays off instead of a Monday and Friday to accommodate the high school schedule, and it appears it has found favor with members of our staff. Spring break would be scheduled from Monday, March 27th through Friday, March 31st, with students returning on Monday, April 3rd. And then the last day of the school year would be Thursday, May 25th for the students and Friday, May 26th for the staff. There is a desire here to conclude this school year before Memorial Day in 2023. So again, the academic calendar will appear on the agenda for the December 8th board meeting. We will post this proposed calendar on the website and invite parents who have questions or comments about this proposed calendar to offer those questions or comments so that we have those prepared for you to review prior to December 8th, at which we would put this on the agenda as a resolution for approval. Any questions about the calendar proposal for this evening? Thank you.
Okay, and then we also are moving on to item G for discussion.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Board of Education, there are 2 topics of interest to discuss with you this evening. The first topic actually is a guidance document that's been provided by the Ohio Department of Health. It was released on October 25th, and it's entitled Masks to Stay, Test to Play. Just a few things about masks to stay and test to play. This particular guidance would be used in a school district where it has made the decision that masking is not a requirement. And so if the data would show at our next board meeting such that the board would pivot to make a decision that masking is not required, this particular guidance document would come into light for us to consider. So first and foremost, in the case where we don't have required masks, and we have a situation where there is a direct contact made in a classroom or in a school activity, the student who is the direct contact will be required to wear the mask for 14 days after that date of exposure. And then, of course, self-monitor if they're an older student, but of course parents play big into this. a parent monitor for symptoms of COVID-19. Thereafter, if the symptoms were to become a reality, the student would have to isolate and be tested. The guidance document with regard to quarantining is such that you see up here on the screen. Again, this only comes into play if the district would pivot to being a district where masking is not required. And this would be consideration if that were to occur. This would come into play with regard to how the district would operate in that environment. This particular guidance comes to us after there was a study in Warren County. And the concern was, in Warren County, I believe that there was a great number of students that were being quarantined and not in school. And what they studied was to determine how many of those students who were quarantined actually ended up being symptomatic with COVID-19. And so what they found was that there really wasn't that much of a spread in school activities. And that's the definer in this whole conversation, is what happens in school versus what happens in the community. Earlier today, the principals met and we asked our district nurse to join us. And what Ms. Pinckney told us is, even though we have had double-digit numbers for the last 3 weeks, what we know is that the spread is not necessarily happening here in our school district, but rather things are happening in homes. Folks are socializing away from school, and then we have these positives occur, which then make implications for quarantining of our students and sometimes our staff members. So the delineation here is whether or not you're a school district that is a mask-required school district or not. And remember, board, that House Bill 244 now is in play, so we cannot treat one group of students separately than we would treat another set of students. The importance of that is it doesn't matter under mask to stay, test to play, whether or not you would have to wear a mask for 14 days if you're a quarantined student or not. The same rules would have to apply for both sides of the fence in this respect. So who is eligible for mask to stay? These are exposures that happen during sports or school-related after-school activities, or for things that happen in the classroom, on the school buses, anything that we would say is a school activity. And these individuals would have been otherwise subject to quarantine under the old quarantine requirements. Again, vaccinated students who are asymptomatic are not recommended to quarantine, but they would have to be tested 5 to 7 days after exposure, just like any other student or staff member would have to be under this particular new guidance. Now, the test to play is a little bit tricky in our opinion, and we had a long conversation this morning with Mr. Fantone about this one. Because if an asymptomatic contact occurs, the student can continue to participate in extracurricular activities. However, those students would have to wear masks when able. What that means is not when they're in the middle of an athletic competition, but if they're sitting on the bench, if they're on the sidelines. Of course, it's still a requirement for all of our students and staff who are being transported on school buses to wear masks. That's a federal requirement. But what has to happen here is there has to be testing on initial notification of exposure to COVID-19. So let's say, for example, we have a basketball game at 6 o'clock tonight, and during the day, we find that there has been a direct contact of a number of students who happen to be on the basketball team. There would have to be testing that occurs before that basketball game occurs that would allow those students to be able to play in that game that night. And what I find interesting, and on the next slide it will show, I believe, that the testing has to occur by a Proctored test. So the Binax Now kits that we have in the school clinic are those that we can use, but some of our parents have taken up to going to, say, CVS or Walgreens, and you can get a test kit to determine whether or not your child is COVID positive. But unless there's a proctor attached to that through an app, those do not apply to this particular testing scenario. Mr. Pantone and the principals talked about, well, who is going to be responsible for these testing? If a contact is known late in the afternoon and the game is at 6 o'clock, is it our staff who's responsible for testing? Is the student going to go home and be tested with the parent? What if the parent is working? And so there's a lot of complications to the test-to-play scenarios that we've only just begun to consider here in our school district. The difference here in that last sentence is really important. Mask to stay and test to play does not apply to the spread that happens in the homes or in the community. So if you have a group of rec volleyball kids who are identified as direct contacts, they're still going to have to quarantine. This has nothing to do with those scenarios. This mask to stay, test to play is only in occasions where we're talking about spread or direct contact in our school classrooms or in related activities such as athletics or extracurriculars. If the student is exposed within the classroom environment, our existing K-12 quarantine guidance should be used to determine whether any additional follow-up is needed. And that's follow-up with other students, making contact calls with parents, making sure Ms. Pinckney is involved. Our clinic staff would also be involved in any of those circumstances. It must be me. Every time I present, thing goes bad. What? There we go. There we go. The other part of it is if there is a classroom exposure, the student will have to be tested as a contact 5 to 7 days after their exposure to the positive COVID student. One ahead, Jim. Yeah. So this is what I was telling you about the quarantine, the proctored assessment. Again, if a parent was going to test their student, they want to take charge and go to a pharmacy, the test kit that they would use to test their students to determine whether or not they're positive has to be the test kit in which there is a proctor, whether it's virtual or if you're going to a doctor's office and there's a person who's a medical doctor, nurse, etc. There has to be a proctor watching the tests take place and being part of that determination as to whether or not the student is tested as a positive student. Board of Education, you received all of this information in several documents from me. And again, this afternoon during our principals meeting, we had a long conversation about what might this look like in our classrooms. And what was most telling was some information shared by Mr. Reese and by Mr. Lynn. And so if you imagine that if you are a middle school student and you would switch classes 7 times during the school day, and we have a situation where we have a student who tests positive, our principals and our teachers are going to have to keep track of those seating charts. And what we'll notice here in a few minutes in my presentation is if we determine to pivot to mask to stay, test to play, Summit County Public Health will no longer do the contact tracing. And so what will occur here in our district is that student, say Sally Smith, tests positive. All of the kids that she has come into contact with, less than 6 feet, because these students wouldn't have masks on, less than 6 feet, they would all have to have conversations, our administrators would have to have conversations with the parents to suggest that that child who sits across the road from Susie Smith is going to need to wear a mask for 14 days, and that day 5 would have to be tested to ensure that they are not COVID positive. So it's going to put the focus on the administrative team here to do the contact tracing, which is going to be time spent away from what's important, and that's instructing students here in our school district. Now, Summit County Public Health has come out pretty strongly in their opinion about the Ohio Department of Health's recommendation. And so what they have told us is school districts can choose to do this. They so are committed to the various strategies that we have in place here, and that would be masking of students, that would be vaccination for those who are eligible and whose parent would agree, and then also the physical distance requirements that we have in place here. They are not necessarily in support of this, and in fact have told school superintendents, again, that if you are not following those strategies and you have a situation in your building where you have come in close contact, they will not be taking care of the contact tracing for us. I am still going to be required to report to Summit County Public Health. I'm still going to be required to notify the students' parents in those classrooms and the students of the parents of students on our school buses, and we would have to keep our dashboard on our website. But the Summit County Public Health folks take a step back then. And I really think it's because they are very much in the mindset that the mitigation strategies that we have in place here are the right things to do based on the continued double digits that we have in Twinsburg. So I sent to you an email this morning or yesterday from Summit County Public Health from a lady named Marlene Martin. And in it, Jen, please receive this. They make a statement, and their statement is the best tools to reduce the spread of COVID-19 is to continue with masking, social distancing, and vaccination when possible. And you know, we're reminded that we're still in the middle of a school year, double digits for the last 3 weeks with kids and staff members who tested positive. Our quarantine numbers have not been great because we have our strategies in place, including wearing masks. But the minute we would step aside from wearing the masks, the quarantine numbers will likely grow if we have kids who are tested positive and are intermingling with other students who are not with masks on during the school day. So it's a risk, of course, and maybe that wouldn't happen, but it's something for the board to consider. And as you know, Board of Education, at our next meeting 2 weeks from now, we presented to you the updated data for our school district, our students, our updated dashboard. But I wanted to make sure that you have all this information to consider before we get to that point, because at that meeting we're going to talk about whether we're going to pivot, maybe, from mask wearing and what the desire of the board is moving forward through the winter holidays. This information is important for you to understand, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them this evening.
Again, this only comes into place if we were to change our procedure.
Right.
And it puts an additional burden on our staff to do yet more tests. You could be contacting 10, 20 or more people a day.
Correct.
You're already doing a lot of that contact tracing, and some of the counties doing the bulk of it.
Right, for every student that I report, they do their own contact tracing. And, honestly, it takes me about an hour a student to do what I need to do on my end. And that's without the principals really doing much of that at all. What I ask them to do is to submit their class rosters to confirm with teachers that the protocols are being followed. And if there's a quarantine situation on a school bus, they'll make that call on my behalf to the parents. But that's about the extent to which we've been asking the building admins to manage this, because really, I believe their focus needs to be on what happens in our classrooms every day. So if the district were to pivot and masking were to be optional, for example, and we do have an outbreak happen in our classrooms, the time to manage the situation will be very great. Not sure that that is something that our board would support, in the sense that really their focus should be on academics and education of children.
So the way it is right now, there's still a lot of time spent on contact tracing, like a lot. So I'd be interested in exploring some options to get some assistance with this, however that would look. I know, I guess sometimes the administrators do that, but like you said, they've got their work cut out for them as well. So that's something to consider, is getting some assistance with this in some ways, so that, I mean, you've got all the responsibilities of the district too, and we have to figure out how we can lessen that on something like this. And so we're going to be looking at this even deeper, or deciding or getting some guidance and looking at over the next couple weeks before our meeting, reviewing all our materials and trying to determine the direction we want to go with this. I don't know if, I know we've done input from parents with reopening plan. I don't know if there's any consideration for that too. However, I know that we've always, like I said, relied heavily on Summit County Board of Health too for our assistance. We've had input from parents before. I don't know how much that would change at this point. Not sure, but for me, and I'm not saying I'm making any decision right now, but I know that the Summit County Board of Health has really been our guiding lights to keep our kids in school. So there's definitely a lot to think about before the next board meeting, a lot to consider and review for each one of us. If anybody else has anything?
Well, I know it's premature in terms of the 6-week decision points that we made.
Right.
But I'd also say, in light of, still double-digit cases, the staff and the plan is working. We're keeping as many students in class as possible. Parents may choose now in the younger grades to get their children vaccinated. And if they do, there's a period of time where, 2 shots, I think it's either 3 or 4 weeks apart. So there's a long runway yet before those that decide to get vaccinated have additional protection. I just think it's still premature. I think this is in typical fashion, ODA, parental health is one thing. Someone says, wait, hold on, you didn't consult us, and then we've got another decision. And really, they just throw this thing, it's always a mess. And then they throw it out in the news, and they expect it to be an immediate decision. And I think we've been prudent, we've been successful. Let's see where we're at the 6-week mark again. But we're headed right into, winter season.
You bring up a good point about the younger children and now the approval of vaccine for the 5 to 11-year-olds. Been in contact with Discount Drug Mart and waiting to hear back from them, and they're waiting to hear back from ODH about how this is going to move forward for the pharmacies. But if they are provided opportunities to do these clinics, what I suggested to them is that we would hold a clinic here, probably at Twinsburg High School, but on a Saturday. Because when you're talking about vaccinating young ones, it's very different than vaccinating a 17 or an 18-year-old. And we would want the parent to be present if they, in fact, would like their child vaccinated. So lots of details to work through on that one. And it is the same as the adults. There's a 3-week period of time, and then after the second vaccine, it's 2 weeks after that that you would be considered to be fully vaccinated. The vaccine for these little kiddos is 1/3 the strength of what we all received as adults.
It depends on when parents decide, and if they decide to do that. That ramp-up period, we could be clear through till January, February, until everybody decides or, get that protection. That's quite a ways away.
Right.
Kenzie, I have a question. So you're talking about holding a clinic for the young ones, how you do for the adults. If you do that, do you have a form that would have the parents sign that you're not responsible in case something were to happen to these kids?
Yes, there are permissions, consent to administer forms. And again, in the case that it would be hosted here, the parents would have to be present with the children. We're just merely hosting a facility for this to happen. And we would not do a clinic for the young ones at the elementary schools for the reason some kids don't do well with vaccinations in general. We don't want them to think of their elementary school as a place where they went to get their vaccine. So it would be at the high school, more than likely on a Saturday if they want to trip that off.
So another question would be, why would you host a clinic here? Why not just send them to their pediatrician?
We're trying to make it easier for parents. Some of our parents don't have pediatricians. What we found with the older students, it was a convenience factor for our families. Really, it's a community service that we provide. Any parent who has the desire for their child to be vaccinated, it's a parent choice. We're just basically making an opportunity a little easier for our families.
And the other comment I had too is, you said we're in the double digits, and that's with masks. So if you were to make the masks optional, which is a new thing, why not try it? Just because, I mean, Rob, you said we're successful. I don't know how successful we are because our numbers aren't zero.
No, but I mean, the quarantine numbers and the fact that we've been able to keep a majority of our students in school is my point. That's what I meant.
But again, you're not cutting it down to nothing, and that's with having masks and wearing the mask, you're still in double digits.
Oh,
So how is it
the
working?
kids do not live in the school 24/7, so the exposures could be happening in other environments.
But that's my point though. That's what I'm trying to make, is the exposure isn't happening in school, it's happening out of school. So why not just try making masks optional?
My logic would say that if the spread is happening outside and it can come inside and the protections, and we drop our guard, why take that risk right now?
Do we know any other district that has done this yet?
Yeah, Marjonia, they lifted the mask mandate last week.
So in our conversation today on my superintendent's call on Wednesday afternoon with Don Skoda, Dr. Clark indicated that since he lifted his mask mandate, he had 15 kids positive this week. So he said he's not sure if it's just a direct result of the masks not in place or if it's a result of stuff in the community. He's not sure. What was interesting, because last week on the call, Mr. Herman from Hudson and myself were talking about our numbers still being double digit. Hudson's had quite a run with this as well. And at that point, Nordonia had 0. So that's why they were confident in making the decision to go away from the mask mandate. And now, Dr. Clark just mentioned, take 10 to 15 of his kids. And he has a great population of his elementary school absent today. He's concerned about that becoming COVID positive little students. So every district has its ups and downs when you're talking about COVID. We could have a good week here, we could have a bad week here. We have just been extremely conservative in our school district, and I think it's been working for us, but of course, things can continue to evolve. And hence, that's why I want you to have this information this evening, because it will come into play in 2 weeks when we talk about what the data looks like and what the board will be comfortable in doing moving this district forward for the next 6 weeks. It's also complicated because now we will have the Thanksgiving holidays and people are congregating. We will soon have the December holidays where people are congregating. And I've gotten a few phone calls from parents to say, are we pivoting out in January? And my response has been, we're watching the numbers, and really Thanksgiving will give us a good indication as to what's happening in our community. So all of this is really day by day, and we make the best decision we can on our data for our school community. So often we want to compare ourselves to that district over there or that district over there, but it's really about what happens within the boundaries of our school community.
And as far as we know, Nordonia is the only one around in our general area since that guidance has immediately pivoted.
Aurora did as well,
Okay.
and I don't know what their numbers are. Mr. Burrow did not mention that in the call today.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm happy to answer questions, or if you have other questions that aren't answered in the materials I've presented to you, please let me know, because I can make the calls and seek the information that you are looking for. The second conversation this evening has to do with our equity implementation plan with the National School Boards Association. 2 weeks ago, during our strategic plan presentation, Mrs. Borden asked a couple questions about the contract that we had with the National School Boards Association. And then since then, Mrs. DeFabio also had some questions, and so we thought we should put this as a discussion topic for the board to converse about this evening. I want to give you a few reminders about where we are with our National School Board Association plan. The board actually authorized the contract with NSBA in March of 2021. And it came to you after we had done a lot of research trying to find an organization that could help us with the important work of equity, making sure that our school district has the practices not just in our classrooms, but board policy and how we operate as an organization that looked at everything through the lens of equity and inclusiveness. Through the plan, we would be working with, and we are currently working with a team of professionals from NSBA that will help us create an environment here that is equity-focused with equity-focused outcomes. Ultimately, we want to make sure that every decision that we make as a school district looks at things through the lens of equity. And that includes policy development and just the general manner in which we operate our school district. At the conclusion of the development of our plan, we believe that we're going to be on the path to making sure that the needs of every student, regardless of their background, would be met here in our school district. We also believe that this plan will help us fully understand the culture and the climate and the educational environment. And, we have students that come and go. Today we had, I think, 3 new kindergarten children enroll. So throughout the school year, we continue to have and welcome new children to our school community. And with each of those new children, we have to get to know them, their backgrounds, where they've come from as far as an educational experience, what their home life might look like, how we can best support their needs. And through the work of the Equity Implementation Plan, we think we'll have a better understanding of looking at each child through an equitable lens, making sure that opportunities are not equal but equitable, and also making sure that we understand the importance of diversity and inclusiveness in all that we do. As you know, in our last presentation of 2 weeks ago, the Equity Implementation Plan is interwoven through several sections of our strategic plan, in particular our 21st Century Teaching and Learning actionable area, as well as our culture, climate, actionable area. We talk about the work of preparing students to be able to be successful in the 21st century, and that's also helping them to become empathetic to one another, understanding what equity means in their lives as well as others, and we believe that the Equity Implementation Plan will get us to that point. So this evening, Board, I just wanted to give you a little background as to what we've been working on. Earlier, I sent you a document that I've been keeping track of with NSBA that shows the progress over the last several months, and there's another copy of that in your folder this evening. You can see that the work has been underway. We have lots of things in progress. We have lots of things yet to do. We have some that we have completed in our tasks. And honestly, the next thing that we were ready to launch here in the very near future would have been a series of surveys for our students, our staff members, and our families to help get some benchmark information about how they perceive the school district does in the area of equity. And so we took a pause on that, knowing that this conversation was important to everybody, and so that we could have a direction with regard to the work that we are underway with the National School Boards Association.
So I have a couple questions, and I appreciate getting us the update on the status. I pulled both the contract and the scope of work from March. As a matter of timeline, less than 48 hours before that last board meeting, everybody received one parent email, and then 10 days passed and it was requested to have this placed on the agenda a couple days ago. Mrs. DeFabio, I'd like to know, and of course not naming names, but you indicated you had parents on several, one, and I'm also curious if my other colleagues were contacted, or the superintendent treasurer were contacted by anybody on this topic. I did not receive a single contact since that one email over 2 weeks ago. Can you give us some insight on what the concerns were, or the calls that you got? Were they calls, were they texts?
Yeah, I actually sat down and I met with them for coffee. And their concerns their questions are, why are we still going to stay with the national board with this board when Ohio pulled out, and how it's going to reflect on, how is it going to be if they come up and they talk and they give their concerns? Are they going to be deemed a domestic terrorist?
So I see what you're saying, and so you had several people that you had coffee with? Or
Yes, I met with
Okay.
a group this past weekend.
And obviously, for those that don't know, the letter that NSBA sent, the label of domestic terrorist, that has nothing to do with this particular board. I think with respect to remonstrance and people that have come to this board in my 8 years, I don't think anybody's been disrespected. I think everybody's been listened to. I think everybody's been given not only more than ample time, but we've also even changed some of our procedures, moving remonstrance up ahead of discussions and even letting people come back up even after remonstrance. So that label, I don't believe, in my opinion, applies to this district and how we've interacted with our public. But what I am concerned with is the fiduciary responsibility we have to this district. This is quite a large contract and was quite a big scope of work. And when you requested this be put on the agenda, I asked Mrs. Powers to give me this update document as to where we are. And there's quite a few things are completed, quite a few things are in progress. And I don't know the exact deployment of NSBA, but I looked up, briefly, it could be 50 to 200 people. And I'm not inclined to throw out the work of the people, the 4-person team, I believe it is, that we're working with, because of what something happened on the national stage and such that basically is a divisive politics. It really has nothing to do with the scope and the work and the important work of this plan. And when I say we have a fiduciary responsibility, this contract was what, 121,000, give or take, and if we're in, what is that, how many, 6-7 months of work already? That would be quite a big chunk of money and expenditure that we would be disregarding if we were to just stop that work. I think this work, in my opinion, is much more important and actually goes, to light of what happens on the national stage. So that's just my opinion on the work that's in progress, the importance of the work, and regardless of what OSBA decided to do at the state and national level politically, let's take care of Twinsburg and the inequity and the whole intent of this plan. I don't think has to do with any of that letter from the national. So that's.
Can I ask something? How many other districts in Ohio are pulling out of this since Ohio pulled out?
So I was with my Alliance colleagues on last Wednesday. I asked the question, coordinates, we asked my colleagues. Nobody else has a contract with this work with NSBA. Of that group that was with me last Wednesday. I don't know if other districts affiliate with them. I can only tell you the group I was with, none of those superintendents are doing this work with that organization.
Yeah, and to just talk a little bit to Mr. Felber's point, my intent in my question last meeting was not about the work, it was about the solvency of this organization as states pull out. Because we know Ohio pulled out now, I had an intuition that was coming and it did. We know Pennsylvania's pulled out, I think Virginia has also pulled out. So my concern is if we continue seeing states pull out, do we have a path forward? I mean, are we legally still obligated to move forward? What happens if they collapse? And that was really the intent.
I mean, that's an excellent question over solvency. I looked at the contract, both parties have a 30-day window they could. But my point is, if the work is good and the staff is reporting the interaction, I would hate to just dissolve ourselves of all that work, regardless of what other, associations are doing from a political standpoint. If the team is still in place and NSBA can fulfill their contract and provide us the work that was contracted, that's my point. And I agree with, it's always to be concerned about any vendor over solvency. And if something changes and Mrs. Powers comes to us in 15 days or 30 days and says, man, they're not fulfilling, they're not returning calls, they fired everybody, well, yeah, and then we have a contract solvency issue. And I don't know if that's been your experience, if the work is continuing, Mrs. Powers.
It has. I had conversations with both officials from NSBA this week, as well as Rick Lewis, who is the executive director of OSBA, and I talked by phone this week. And what Mr. Lewis said to me is he recognizes, honestly, we were connected with NSBA through an arm of OSBA. And actually in that document, I highlighted that NSBA is charged with the responsibility of keeping OSBA sort of up to date with what Twinsburg is doing in this important work. What Mr. Lewis said is OSBA is not going to stand in the way of Twinsburg continuing their contract with NSBA. He likened it this way. He said it's like two parents who are divorcing and they still want to take care of their child, so they're there to support their child along the way. So he said, like in MSBA and OSBA, they're both organizations that are here to support the work. Understanding that the board may say, we don't want to continue that affiliation, NSBA officials, when I spoke to them, would respect that decision. We would have to give them 30 days notice, and then we would have to, as an organization, determine how best to move this work forward. And speaking with Mr. Lewis at OSBA, there is now an arm of OSBA that does equity work. I don't know anything about that, but he said to me, if you as a school board were to determine to move away from the NSBA, OSBA can assist us in figuring out what's going to happen next and can also assist us in severing that contract with NSBA. So both organizations have been very professional in conversations this week with them, are here to support the school district. They both understand the importance of this work and they don't want us to pivot and not do the work, but it's really up to the board to say, yes, we're going to move on and have this contract, or no, maybe it's just the optics that don't look right.
So if I heard you correctly, what I just heard was we can get out in 30 days notice if we so desire with no financial obligations beyond what we've already. Correct. So that's fantastic. And then the other is when you have highlighted the NSBA, will communicate with the OSBA and include them throughout the process. Is that still happening now, or is that sort of been broken down now?
No, it actually is still happening. In fact, before I could catch up with Mr. Lewis and the representative that we work with, Adam Lustig, is the lead now that Regina is out on sick leave, had talked about the work that we've already done, and then I caught up with them. So that's been an ongoing thing. Before we were able, as a school district, to affiliate and have a contract with NSBA, OSBA had to authorize that to occur. So the national organization is not allowed to work with the state school districts unless the state organization allows them to do that.
And I just want to speak very, very, I guess, not simply, but I guess I'll say simply, about the way our board meetings have run. I've had teachers I know from other states and community members and just people from outside of Twinsburg who might not know Twinsburg, outside of our state, might not know us as well, who said things like, oh, you know, how's it in Twinsburg? I mean, you guys having some crazy board meetings? And I mean, I like to think our community's better than that. I mean, Twinsburg is an amazing community. I mean, we've had some passionate parents who have come and speak at board meetings, and it takes a lot of courage to get up there and prepare what you want to speak about. And even if you're angry at the people you're looking at, or you don't agree with the members up on, you know, at the board or the administration, it takes a lot of courage to do that. And these parents have done that, and they've done it with class, and they've been, for the most part, very respectful. And I don't see this domestic terrorist target coming at our parents. I think in the past, I think in the 8 years that I've been on board, I don't think we've ever even had one parent removed from a meeting. So I don't have that concern at all that we would even be concerned about having that label on any of our parents. Twinsburg is better than that. So if parents have that feeling of if they're feeling threatened, if they're going to, you know, be afraid to speak at a board meeting because they might be targeted or something, they might be, you know, classified as a certain, you know, label. I've never seen that in 8 years, never. So that's just my 2 cents on the way our board meetings have run. Yeah, like I said, we've had heated meetings. We've had parents who've come upset, angry, but when they've come up and speak, they've been, from what I can see for the most part, very respectful to the board administration as they're stating their case.
I think that the controversy is not, the way I perceive it, it's not that. It's that parents are concerned that their right to come to board meetings will be taken away. And I agree. I mean, this is a calm, cool, collected community, but I think that's why this has become controversial.
I don't think we have that.
And I look at this like, this is any other vendor. If the vendor doesn't perform, then we have a different decision to make. The 30 days, regardless, I think it's more important to look at how much work has been done, how much money has been spent of this contract. And I would personally not want to just throw that away. If this is about diversity and inequities and inclusion, why would we let the national rhetoric take us off target to do that? It doesn't make sense.
So I made comments 2 weeks ago, very briefly, but what I wanted to make sure that I made clear is that I don't condone the language in the document that was created by the National School Boards Association to characterize parents. I don't. I think that that's wrong. I think that the decision that OSBA has made, in response to that, it's fine. That's OSBA. What troubles me, and this was really the impetus behind bringing this up, and the letter that we received specifically asked us to divest ourselves of this contract. That was the ask. Okay, and I purposely did not mention it 2 weeks ago, but I'm mentioning it now because that's where I draw the line. This work is too important. This is not just any contract. I want to remind the community, and I want to remind this board that the impetus behind even getting into this work was because over a summer ago, students spoke very candidly and with a lot of emotion about experiences that they had when they were in this district. Some very unfortunate experiences. And while I'd like to say that I think we do, a pretty good job providing the best possible education that we can to all of our students, we've fallen short. And that was a wake-up call. So this board made a commitment. We drafted a resolution. We passed it unanimously that we would support diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects, and we would do something about the things that we heard on that day. So this contract is where we're literally putting our money where our mouth is. And the extent to which we would even consider moving away from the commitment that we made is unacceptable. So I've expressed a lot of emotion around this and that. I'm very passionate about this. I do this work at the state level. I've had direct experience with the individuals that are providing this service to this district, and I feel very confident in their ability to deliver what they say that they can. The issue of solvency is a legitimate issue. I think that that's a legitimate question. But the extent to which the people possess the ability and the expertise to provide the support that this district needs is unquestioned because I've received the training myself. So I'm in full support of continuing this work. I have no interest or appetite in moving away from this contract. And the extent to which we would consider doing it, I plan to be very vocal about it. That's all I have to say.
I want to thank Mrs. DeFabio for bringing this up in enough time for the board to prepare and pull contracts and refamiliarize ourselves with the details of that material from March. That gave us proper time in the last 2-3 days since this was put on the agenda. So thank you for giving us that time to prepare.
And again, I've seen what's happened nationwide at other board meetings. We have no plans to limit parent participation in remonstrance. We've had no reason to do so. We've had, I know the process can be frustrating. It doesn't really allow us some, time for dialogue back and forth. Same with other school boards, same with council meetings. But it gives the parents a voice to speak, an opportunity to speak their mind and voice their thoughts and opinions for us to consider and brew upon, and just to hear your voices, and no plans on getting rid of parent participation meetings. Or not necessarily a parent, but community with remonstrance.
So Kathy, who do we deal with at the MSBA?
So our direct contact is a woman by the name of Regina Jacobs. Ms. Jacobs has stepped aside. She's on extended sick leave, so her next in charge is a gentleman named Adam Lustig, L-U-S-T-I-G. And there is a team that they work with, but it is Adam who is our go-to, and Regina is not available.
Anybody else have any comments or concerns right now regarding that? Well, thank you for the opportunity to discuss that. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, speaking of remonstrance and discussion, Mr. Aho, do we have any blue cards tonight? All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to action item I, Treasurer's Report and Recommendations. 1, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves the following meeting minutes, regular meetings of October 6, 2021 and October 20th, 2021, and special meeting of October 12th, 2021, as sent to the board under separate cover. 2, financial report. Resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the following financial reports: band reconciliation, general fund, financial summary report, and financial report by fund for the month of September 2021, as sent to the board under separate cover. And 3, check register. Resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts a check register for the month of September 2021. The total, including payroll, $6,624,018.29. Do I have a motion? Move, please.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do you have a second? Second by Mr. Felber. Any discussion on these items? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon? Mrs. Davis?
Yes. Those items pass 5-0. J, action items, personnel. 1, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the certificated licensed personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts the classified personnel and/or contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. And 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts a supplemental contract recommendations detailed in the attached exhibit as per the dates, terms, and other applicable conditions specified pending satisfactory ORC background checks. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do you have a second? Second by Mr. Felber. Any discussion?
I'd just like to congratulate Deborah Marlowe, teacher at Bissell, for her 23 years of service. She's going to be retiring. And it's hard to replace that kind of knowledge, but thank you for those many years of service.
Exactly. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none. Mr. Aho, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Felber?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes. Those items pass 5-0. Action item K, expulsion hearing designee Ronald L. Victor. Resolved that the Twinsburg Board of Education directs the superintendent to approve on an as-needed basis an expulsion appeal hearing designee for the Board of Education for the 2021-2022 school year. Ronald L. Victor at an hourly rate of $150 plus mileage at 55 cents per mile. This is a general fund expense as sent to the board under separate cover. 2, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education accepts a donation of $1,616 from RDP Sports Plus Incorporated, 9261 Ravenna Road, Suite BH, Twinsburg, to the Twinsburg High School Pep Club for homecoming per the attached exhibit. 3, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a request from Mrs. Sonia Tompkins, guardian of an 8th grade student at RBC Middle School, to exercise BOE Policy 5111, optional tuition-free education, H, and to allow the child to remain a student in the Twinsburg City School District through the 2021-2022 school year. 4, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves an agreement with the Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio for admission for one student to attend the Positive Education Program at Greenview for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year, $252 per day for the 142 days with tuition costs of $35,784 as sent to the board under separate cover. This is a general fund expense. 5, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves an addendum contract with the ESC of Northeast Ohio, 6393 Oak Tree Boulevard, Independence, to include 1 temporary psychologist at the cost of $61.30 an hour, 2 substitute for a member of the staff who is on sick leave, as sent to the board under separate cover. This is a general fund expense. 6, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approves a revision for the Freshman Success Course of Study at Twinsburg High School. The adoption was approved by the District Curriculum Technology Committee on October 18, 2021, as sent to the board under separate cover. 7, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education adopts Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar for the Social Justice and Literature course reading list at Twinsburg High School. The adoption was approved by the District Curriculum Technology Committee on October 18, 2021. 8, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education adopts the 57 bus by Dash Vacillator for the Social Justice and Literature course reading list at Twinsburg High School. The adoption was approved by the District Curriculum Technology Committee on October 8, 2021. And 9, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education approve the adoption of Ohio's Early Learning and Development Standards. The adoption was approved by the District Curriculum Technology Committee on October 18, 2021, as sent to the board under a separate cover. Do I have a motion to move, please? So moved by Mr. Felber. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Curtis. Any discussion?
Just to thank RDPD Sports for the donation of $1,716 for the high school pep club for the homecoming. Always appreciate donations.
Yes, thank you. Do we have any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Ayo, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes, those items pass 5-0. And 10, resolve that the Twinsburg Board of Education holds this public hearing to give notice of recommendation for the 2022-2023 Twinsburg School Academic Calendar and to provide an opportunity for public comment per the attached exhibit. Do I have a motion to move, please?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. DeFabio and second by Mr. Curtis. Okay. Mr. Ayo, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon, Mrs. Davis,
Yes, that item passes 5-0. I, is that L, can't read it. Any other items tonight for miscellaneous? Okay.
I know you mentioned it in your president's report, but I just wanted to also piggyback on that one. Congratulate you for your reelection, as well as congratulate Ms. Ronnie Crawford and Travis on their election to our Board of Education. I also want to thank the other gentleman who also ran. Running for any kind of public office is not easy, and it's hard work, a lot of long days, and you kind of put yourself out there. So I do appreciate anyone who's willing to run for public office. So I wanted to again commend Ron and Leah on being elected to the Board of Education. Looking forward to working with you and keeping things moving.
All right, thank you so much. All right, executive session. that the board enters into executive session at 8:31 to discuss employment, discipline, and compensation of public employees as per the Board of Education Policy number 0166A, and to discuss with the board's legal counsel disputes involving the board that are subject of pending or imminent court action as per the Board of Education Policy 0166D. Do I have a motion to move, please? So moved by Mr. Curtis. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Felber. Mr. Abel, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Curtis,
Yes.
Mr. Felber,
Yes.
Mrs. DeFabio,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes. That item passes 5-0. We don't expect any need to reconvene, so motion to adjourn, please? No motion. Fourth witness. All right, we are now in executive session. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching.